Hare Krishna. Today we're going to talk about Draupadi's empathy that we read in the first canto of the 7th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So recently, a Florida man was convicted of a first-degree murder for fatally shooting Davis, a teenager, in an argument over loud music outside a Jacksonville convenience store in Florida, America, in November 2012. 2 years later, in October 2014, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. That means he had to spend his life in prison. And then the teenager's mother, the teenager who was killed, his mother, Davis's mother, Lucia, said she always taught her son to love and to forgive. And then she said to the killer in court, "Therefore, I too must be willing to forgive, and so I choose to forgive you, Mr. Dunn, for taking my son's life." In another incident in Iran in April 2014, in a literal application of Qisas, the Sharia law of retribution, the victim's family was allowed to participate in their son's killer's punishment by pushing the chair on which he stood while the noose was tied on his neck. So basically to participate in the hanging of the killer. So as the victim's mother approached the killer to push the chair, she instead slapped the victim in the face, the convict in the face, and then she decided to forgive her son's killer. And then the victim's father removed the noose from the neck of the killer, and his life was spared. And then later you could see a scene where both the victim's mother and the killer's mother cried together, sharing their pain. So it is very inspiring to see the value of forgiveness being followed in such difficult situations. And we see that this value of forgiveness in the first case was followed by people practicing the Christian religion, and in the second case, followed by people practicing the Islamic religion. And we also, when we hear these stories, it reminds us of the example of Draupadi from the 7th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we will discuss how, in spite of suffering the loss of her 5 sons, she chooses to act from a place of dharma and compassion. Something that we all can imbibe in every moment of our life as we make decisions on how we deal with different situations. So Ashwathama killed the 5 sons of Draupadi in their sleep. When she saw that her 5 sons were killed, she was extremely grieved to lose all 5 of them. And Arjuna, in order to pacify her and capture the wrongdoer, set out to capture Ashwathama. And Ashwathama escaped in fear. Seeing Arjuna following him and also noticing that his horses were tired, Ashwathama became very scared. And in order to do a last attempt to protect himself, Ashwathama releases the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra, to protect himself. And then when Arjuna is seeing this imminent danger and is seeing all these signs of danger, he immediately takes shelter of Lord Sri Krishna. And on the Lord's advice, he releases another Brahmastra to counteract the one released by Ashwathama. And then he retracts both the Brahmastras. And then Arjuna then immediately arrests Ashwathama in great anger. And he is on his way bringing Ashwathama back to the camp. So in the meanwhile, Lord Krishna is trying to examine Arjuna in religion and also to show the greatness of Arjuna's qualities. So he encourages Arjuna to kill the son of Dronacharya. But however, Arjuna, being a devotee of the Lord and being a great soul, he does not like the idea of killing him. So although Ashwathama was a heinous murderer of Arjuna's family members, Arjuna does not like the idea of killing him, and he brings Ashwathama to the camp and puts him before Draupadi. Now Draupadi sees him bound by ropes and sees him in that difficult situation, and then due to her female nature and due to her being extremely good-natured and well-behaved, she forgets that he is the killer of the Brahmana, of her sons, but she shows full respects to him as a Brahmana first. And she cannot tolerate Ashwathama being bound by ropes. And being a devoted lady, she says, release him. He's a Brahmana. He's a spiritual master. And then she says that, he's the son of our Guru. And we have learned military art from him. So out of gratitude, we must not kill him because our Guru is being represented by his son, Ashwathama. So we cannot kill him. So the first point she says is he's a Brahmana. The second point she says is he's out of gratitude. The third point she says is that we must not cause grief to glorious family members who are always respectable and worshipful. And then the third point, she exhibits her empathic nature, where she says that I do not want Drona's wife Krpi, who is Ashwathama's mother, to cry for the loss of her son, just like I am crying for the loss of my sons. And then finally she reminds her husbands that the duty of Kshatriyas is to respect the Brahman order and protect them. So Yudhishthir supports Draupadi, and so do Nakula, Sahadev, Arjuna and Krishna agree with Maharaj Yudhishthir. However, Bhima is very angry and he disagrees and he says, no, we must kill this person. So then the personality of Godhead Krishna intervenes, and then he tells that a friend of a Brahmana is not to be killed, but if he is an aggressor, he must be killed. And all these rulings are in the scriptures, and you should act accordingly. So you have to fulfill your promise to your wife, and you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhimsena and me. So then Arjuna, being a devotee of the Lord, he can understand the unequivocal orders of the Lord. And then with his sword, he severs the jewel and the hair from Ashwathama's head. And then cutting the hair from the head and depriving him of his wealth and driving him from his residence are the prescribed punishments for the relative of a Brahmana. So Arjuna, being a devotee of the Lord, understands properly the mood of the Lord and then acts according to the injunctions that are written in the Shastras about how to punish a relative of a Brahmana. So after that, then the sons of Pandu, like all these Pandavas and Draupadi, they grieve for the loss of their sons, and then they do the proper rituals for the dead bodies of their relatives, all of them. Now in this story and in the other stories that we mentioned, and in this story, Draupadi has lost 5 of her sons. So she's not like experienced happiness in the material sense of the term even after winning the battle. They're not happy because of the battle. They never wanted the battle. So even after they won the battle, they fought it for dharma. It's not that they're extremely happy that, wow, we did it, we killed so many people, we brought justice and all. They're not very happy because they're devotees of the Lord and they don't like harming living entities. And to add further to the misery, she's lost 5 of her sons. And she's sad and she's upset and she's shocked that her sons were killed in such a way, such innocent boys. But while she's advising on the course of action, and it's not that she's had some like 5 years of time to think about it and having gone through the entire process of grief and loss and support and forgiveness, that she's come to this conclusion. She is in front of the dead bodies of her sons, and the killer of her sons is right there in front of her. And even in spite of that situation, she is maintaining her compassionate nature. She is not allowing her personal anger and her personal shock and upset and sadness and anger to come in the way of how Ashwathama must be treated. Not even once in the 5 points she mentions any mistreatment of Ashwathama. She's only advising her husbands to respect Ashwathama. And she speaks properly from Shastra on why Ashwathama should be treated with respect. And because she was so connected with her pain and the loss she was experiencing, she could also connect with the pain of what Krpi would go through if she lost her son. So she didn't want her to go through the same pain that she was going through. Usually what happens is that when we are when we have been wronged, we are not connected with our pain, and whatever that pain is gets converted to anger, and we want to put that anger on somebody and hold somebody accountable in that situation, thinking that by doing that our pain will be resolved. But acting out of anger like that, when the pain is not resolved and that gets converted to anger, it usually does not help us come out of our grief. But here Draupadi is not acting out of any anger. She is very deeply connected to her own pain and what she is feeling. And she is able to understand and act properly in that situation. Now, this is how we understand. Of course, Draupadi is a very spiritually elevated lady, and there is no need for her to connect to her pain and all of these things like that, in the material sense of the term. But for us, when we are in such situations, instead of thinking about how to retaliate, if we first deeply connected with how we are feeling, we will also be able to deeply connect with all the instructions we have received over the years through our association with devotees, through reading of Srila Prabhupada's books, and to hearing lectures of Srila Prabhupada and various esteemed devotees within our movement. So when we do that, when we pause and we think, we remember all of these good instructions and we are able to act properly. So here Draupadi was able to thus act from a place of dharma and genuine empathy. So living a life of spiritual values is a moment-to-moment thing. Every moment in our life is an opportunity to practice these spiritual values. And this Vaishnavism is beyond right and wrong. Vaishnavism is of living a life that is pleasing to Krishna. And through the experiences we have in our life, and through the choices we make, even in our motherhood, it seems like a background function which is not glorified so much, which is not appreciated so much. But even just by going through this very great function of motherhood, this great duty and role of motherhood that is glorified so much in our Shastras, we can practice the Vaishnava Siddhanta to the highest degree. And by doing activities and taking decisions that are very pleasing to Krishna and the Vaishnavas. And in this way we can deliver ourselves and also our dependents, that is our children and the generations to come, by setting the right example of practicing Krishna consciousness in all the situations of life. And now for us to be able to act like Draupadi in those situations, we need to have very strong following of Srila Prabhupada's process of chanting, hearing, reading, associating with devotees, eating a diet of prasad, and engaging in steady, fixed, time-sensitive devotional service. Hare Krishna.